Okay, now let everybody in and then we'll begin.
And you're keeping everybody on mute, right, Howard?
Yes, yeah, everyone. Good evening, everybody. Everyone should be on mute, but if you're not, please mute yourself now. And we're going to begin. Some of the candidates are not yet here because they're tied up at other events, but they will be joining us. So first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here this evening. My name is Jill Zippin. I'm chairwoman of Democratic Jewish Outreach Pennsylvania, and I'm also on the board of WLI. Democratic Jewish Outreach Pennsylvania is the only Jewish Democratic Political Action Committee in the state of Pennsylvania, and we're both a state and federal PAC. Montgomery County Women's Leadership Initiative works to put women who are Democrats in elected office at all levels of government, and we are very happy to partner with them this evening. I want to thank Andrea Baptiste, the chairwoman of WLI, and Dottie Miller for doing the work behind the scenes to organize this. We are here to learn about statewide office candidates. There are 3 offices for which there will be elections: Attorney General, Treasurer, and Auditor General. I just want to say a few brief words about each office so we all are on the same page and understand what the job is. The Attorney General is the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer, charged with prosecution of organized crime, corruption, responsible for collection of debts, taxes, represent the Commonwealth and all Commonwealth agencies at the request of the Auditor General or the State Treasurer, enforces consumer protection laws and antitrust laws, among many other things. The Treasurer serves as the custodian of more than $150 billion in Commonwealth funds and is responsible for the receipt and deposit of state monies, investment management, and oversight of all withdrawals and deposits from state agencies, manages the 529 College Career Savings Program, Keystone Scholars, and the PA Able Savings Program, among other things. The Auditor General is the chief fiscal watchdog of the Commonwealth. It's responsible for using audits to ensure that all state money is spent legally and properly. The mission of the Auditor General is to serve the people of Pennsylvania by improving government accountability, transparency, and the effective use of your taxpayer dollars. So we're going to begin with the AG candidates. I see we have Keir Gray here, Jared Solomon, and Jack Stolzheimer. If Joe is on, I don't see him, and I don't see Eugene as of yet, although he will be joining us. So each candidate will have 3 minutes to speak. And I'm going to begin, as I said, with the Attorney General candidates. You have 3 minutes to introduce yourselves and say a few words about your race. And I'm going to begin with Keir Bradford Gray. Please unmute yourself and say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. As Jill said, my name is Keir Bradford Gray, and I'm running for Attorney General. And I'm running for Attorney General because I really feel compelled to bring the responsibility and the understanding and the awareness of what the role can do to help people in their everyday lives, what they're struggling with and challenging right now in terms of sitting at their kitchen tables, making sure that they feel protected, making sure they feel safe, and making sure their opportunity is not eroded. I'll just give you a brief background about myself. I was born and raised 2 union-proud parents who I saw struggle to want better for me than they had for themselves. My dad was a laborer, union worker on the water and sewer department. And although he worked very hard every day and put into his funds, he struggled to get the medical attention and care that he needed, and we lost him early. Although we had a lot of medical debt, that really stopped us and prevented us from doing things that everyday families should be able to do, go on vacations and send me to the best of schools. My mother was a parole officer, and I saw her stability be ripped up from under her when she and her African-American coworkers were fired. The only person that came in to protect them was a woman named Barbara Armwine. She was a civil rights lawyer, and she treated them with the dignity, respect, and care, and got their job back when the court found racial discrimination. At that point, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer to protect people. I knew the law was a powerful tool, and the law could do a lot of things to shield people from harms of very powerful interests. And that is why now I am looking at the role of the Attorney General. Prior to understanding that I wanted to do this job as the Attorney General, I was a public defender. I used my law degree to really deal with some real systemic issues and look at root causes of why people are really relegated to these lives of crime and criminality. And what I saw was how harms and how systems sometimes impacted people so that they didn't have the stabilities that they needed, and they fell prey to the justice system. I understand that so very well because I was very proximate to these issues in both state and federal practices. I was a very well-recognized lawyer, and one that has been touted to go courageously against larger organizations, larger systems on behalf of people that were very vulnerable and sometimes often disposable. But I did it because I knew that people needed a fair opportunity to be heard, and people needed a fair process by which our justice system was to be found credible. After I did that, I got my first leadership opportunity when Josh Shapiro appointed me to be the chief defender of Montgomery County. And it was there that I saw my spirit of leadership and collaboration and how it actually advanced systems. Montgomery County was the third largest county in the state with a population of a little over 800,000. We represented a lot of people, and I got to know a lot of issues that were going on. And I worked very well with the District Attorney, Risa Furman,
And I'm going
to
to cut
bring.
you off really quickly, so you need to finish up because everyone has 3 minutes. Otherwise, we'll
Yep.
never get through this.
Am I on?
Wrap
I
it
didn't
up.
see 1 minute. I thought it was a little bit over 1 minute.
Oh, no,
So-
no, we were on 7:12. We started 7:09. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. Okay, I'm so sorry. I'm
No,
maybe
you
my
finish,
clock
you
is a
can
little
just
different.
finish your thought, and then I'm gonna just move on. to
Okay.
the person.
I also got a chance to lead in the largest county in Pennsylvania, which is over 1.5 million people, where I made very innovative and creative opportunities for people to advance public safety. I am running for the Attorney General because I want people to understand the role and responsibility of the Attorney General. They call it the top law enforcement officer, but other places call it the people's lawyer because it protects people against powerful interests and makes sure freedoms are protected and larger organizations are brought to accountability for the harms and violence they play in our lives, whether they're in the street corner or the boardroom. I want to use my creative lawyering to make sure that I protect all people, that I have a vantage point of seeing and can bring a perspective that is necessary to the role of the Attorney General. Thank you very much, Jill, and I
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
the time.
Your next up is we're going in alphabetical order, and Eugene and Joe aren't here. Is Jared Solomon.
Hey, Jill. How you doing,
Hey,
everybody?
Jared, how are you?
Hi.
You get your 3 minutes to say a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much for having me, everybody. It's great to be here. First of all, I want to thank you all for the hard work that you did to make sure that our appellate courts are in Democratic hands until 2035, protecting our fundamental rights as Democrats. Thank you. I'm Jared Solomon. I'm a state representative in the 202nd Legislative District, and I'm running to be your next Attorney General because I want to bring safe, thriving neighborhoods with opportunities for all Pennsylvanians in all of our 67 counties. The reason I want to do this is because this is the work that I already do in Northeast Philadelphia. This is where my passion is. I grew up raised by a single mom above my great-grandparents' butcher shop in Northeast Philadelphia. Now, my mom didn't have a lot in terms of money for our family, but what she had is a remarkable work ethic and fight to her. I watched her close up, demonstrating that, unleashing opportunities for those kids in her special education classroom. Her fight and work ethic inspired my fight. I went on to Swarthmore College, Villanova Law, practiced antitrust securities law, where I took the fight to large corporations, more concerned with their bottom line than taking care of people in Pennsylvania. I went into the United States Army, served as a JAG Corps officer, still serving in our National Guard. Now, when I came back home, I saw a neighborhood that had changed. I saw crime on the rise, opportunity down, so I stood up and fought for my neighborhood. I ran against the longest serving member in the Pennsylvania legislature in 2016 and said, we are going to change the trends in our neighborhood and we're going to do it the right way by embracing a sense of fairness, openness, and honesty. I won overwhelmingly in 2016 and then went to work, driving resources into my community, bringing back our business corridors, literally lighting up the neighborhood with new lighting, cleaning up the trash and bringing anchor placemaking properties back to our community. As we did this work, crime started to tick down and opportunity started to go up. The only real pushback I got in this work, one group, special interests. They're at every turn throughout Pennsylvania and they're in my community too. These are the gun manufacturers that put guns into the wrong hands, landlords who live out of state, don't care about properties back here at home, contractors who dump waste into communities. I stood up to all of them at every turn, but I just didn't do this locally. I stood up to special interests, not just throughout our state, but all the way up to Trump, political power brokers, political elites. If you are more interested in padding your own pocket than taking care of people, as Attorney General, I will come after you. And we know why this is so
Jared,
important.
I'm gonna cut you out about 30 seconds, so you need to wrap it up. I'm sorry.
I'll
I'm
wrap
trying
it
to
up.
keep everyone on a tight schedule here.
2024, Trump and his special interests are coming, and they're going to be threatening our core fundamental rights and freedoms. The right to vote, workers' rights, LGBTQ rights. And this requires someone that has the skill set, the know-how, the fight, the values to push back against those special interests at every turn. I'm Jared Solomon. I would love your support to be your next Attorney General. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jared. Next up is Jack Stolzheimer. Jack, I know you're in a Zoom somewhere. If you can unmute yourself, if you're still here. He is here.
Bill,
Yes.
you hear me now?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Awesome.
Go ahead. It's
I'm like
20:15
Ryan
and you have 3 minutes. Go ahead.
Right. So like Ryan Bizzaro, I'm driving right now, but unlike him, I'm not as technologically savvy. So I just want to say hello to everyone, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. Many of you know who I am. I'm the district attorney of Delaware County, right next door to Montgomery County. I've been elected twice now as the DA there, and I'm running for Attorney General because it is, as Jill, you suggested at the beginning of the call, the chief law enforcement officer of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, responsible for thousands of investigations and prosecutions every year. I think I am uniquely qualified to win this seat for the Democratic Party because I do that work every single day successfully in the 5th largest county in Pennsylvania. And ladies and gentlemen, many of you probably know, and if you want to check out my website, you'll see, when I ran for DA 4 years ago, I promised not to just be tough on crime, but to be smart on crime. And I've lived up to that. We started an environmental crimes unit in my office to protect our planet and our communities. I'm one of the only DAs in the Commonwealth who stood up for women's abortion rights. I opposed the Dobbs decision in a legal filing and then took a pledge, a public pledge with Attorney General Josh Shapiro, never to prosecute a woman for violating her abortion rights that were taken away by the Dobbs decision. I've done criminal justice reform. I've reduced our county prison population by 1/3. And I've also made sure and led the fight to deprivatize our county jail. It was once the only privately run facility, correctional facility in the Commonwealth. I have led the fight in law enforcement in my community to change our war on drugs into a war on addiction. I have decriminalized marijuana and successfully sued opioid distributors to bring millions of dollars to help people with substance abuse disorder. And most passionately, I fought wage theft. I am proud to say in the week I've been running for district attorney, I've already been endorsed by 3 major unions and going to be endorsed probably by a 4th tonight. And the thing I'm also most passionate about is stopping gun violence in our communities. Many of you know the city of Chester was once one of the most violent small cities in America. When I got elected DA, I brought the community and the police together in a partnership that has reduced the number of shootings by 65% over 3 years, the number of gun homicides by 68. All of this work I did in partnership with Josh Shapiro when he was our great attorney general. I look forward to taking his place to fighting for us, our principles, and public safety of our communities every single day as your attorney general. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have two treasurer candidates on the Zoom, Erin McClellan and Ryan Bizzarro. Erin, do you want to start and say a few words about yourself? You have 3 minutes.
All right, am I off mute now?
Erin, I heard you for a second.
hear-
Yes,
Was
I
that?
can hear you. There you are. I see
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time and the opportunity tonight. I'm Erin McClelland, and I'm a candidate for state treasurer. I was born and raised in the outskirts of Allegheny County in a great little mill town where we still have an operating steel mill and about 5,000 steel workers. I come from 4 generations of organized labor. My dad was IBW. My mom was UFCW, and my grandfather was a steel worker. And my great-grandfather was an organizer for the CIO. I have actually run a small business. I started the state's first and only orthomolecular medical center for addiction and mental health. And I raised $2 million in venture funding for that. And that program was featured twice in Industrial Engineer magazine. So we're real proud of that. I spent a year training under U.S. Treasury Secretary Paul O'Neill. And under Paul, I learned a lot about what the capacity for this office is when you really think out the box, and the processes that you can put in place as a treasurer to actually support your working families with banking products, support products, savings programs. There was a lot he taught me about this. So I am running for this seat because of the unbelievable innovations that we've seen in 2022 and on. When we elected our current treasurer in 2020, the world was a very different place, and there was a very basic understanding of what a state treasurer does. Today, that looks completely different. Joe Biden has changed the game. We have a lot of people throughout Pennsylvania that are interested in a lot more public banking than we've done before. Philadelphia has already done feasibility on that. Biden's FDIC has put forth a whole slew of opportunities to work on mission-driven banking, minority deposit institutions. And a lot of that is not being done because our current state treasurer isn't interested in moving forward. Yet all over the country, you're seeing these type of innovations in small town banking. Their mission-driven banking process that they put in place through the FDIC allows for a great deal of funding to put toward rural banks, low-income banks, and minority banks owned by women and people of color. Our current treasurer has absolutely demonstrated no interest whatsoever in moving any of those platforms forward at all. And in Pennsylvania, we only have 3 minority depository institutions. 2 are in Philadelphia, 1 is in Montgomery County. We would love to have more in a lot of these small towns throughout Pennsylvania, and definitely on the western part of the state. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to really reinvent how this office looks. And Joe Biden has changed the game with a lot of those opportunities. They're not going to be there forever, though. So we have.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up your remarks, and we'll move
Yeah, no.
on. I think we're losing you. The next candidate is Ryan Bizzarro. He's also in the car, I believe, but you have 3 minutes. Go ahead, Ryan.
I am in the car. Thank you. I'm driving back to Erie from Harrisburg, but I thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here tonight. I'm Ryan Bizzarro. I'm a representative from Erie County, and I'm chair of the House Majority Policy Committee. And I come to you tonight as a candidate for state treasurer. Look, throughout my entire life, I beat the odds, from fighting through childhood cancer to outperforming the president and governor in a red swing state. I won every election I've been in because of the dedication and work I put into a campaign. Look, I'm proud to be part of a leadership team that helped build the first Democratic majority in over a decade. And I'm the only candidate in this race who has proven they could beat Republicans in their own backyard. I've been the top target of unlimited dark money from right-wing extremists for years. They've literally sent dozens of mailers and texts. In my district, 17 total. I got a new one today, and I'm not even on the ballot. They've been doing this to me for 8 years, and I'm still standing. The Treasury needs leadership, right? The Treasury needs leadership and someone who knows how to talk to people about the programs that are there for them. In other states, the Treasury is investing in the future of energy and small businesses and in putting money back into the pockets of everyday people. And it is, in my opinion, the Treasury should be an agency that is tackling generational poverty, education preparedness, and investing in Pennsylvania's small businesses and their economic future. Establishing these programs, it takes guts. It takes guts and the ability to work with the legislature to pass legislation. And I'm the person that can do that. In fact, I'm the only candidate in this race who can do that, who is battle tested and proven.
And I'm gonna stop you there. We do, so to just flip back to the Attorney General, Eugene DePasquale joined. So Eugene, you have 3 minutes to give an opening statement and say a few words about yourself.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Eugene DePasquale, and for 8 years, I was honored to be your Auditor General, leading the tough fights and tough investigations. It was my investigation that found over 3,000 untested rape kits. Working with my team, we cleared that backlog, got a lot of bad people off the street, and brought justice to victims. It was also my investigation that found 58,000 unanswered phone calls, the child abuse hotline. Any single one of those calls could have been life or death for a child. And also my investigation into what's known as Real Alternatives, that was giving horrible advice to pregnant women, but it was my investigation eventually paved the way for Governor Shapiro to cancel their contract. And those are some of the tough investigations I did as your Auditor General. But I also have a personal background that is unique. My dad was wounded in Vietnam, eventually put into a military hospital where they prescribed to him synthetic heroin. That led to a 30-year battle of addiction, eventually him dealing, and eventually a 10.5-year federal prison sentence. See, I've seen both sides of the criminal justice system. I've seen both sides of the war on drugs. I also know what it's like when you let insurance companies get away with things. My brother had muscular dystrophy. Because of that, our family never had health insurance. When he passed away, the bills kept coming even after the funeral, and my dad even had to come to the funeral in shackles. So those are the personal experiences I will bring as your Attorney General, along with my professional experience of leading those tough investigations to be your attorney, to stand up for reproductive freedom, to use my experience as an environmental lawyer to protect our environment, to make sure that consumers are protected, use my experience to protecting seniors in our nursing homes, and also making sure that our democracy is saved. Those are some of the things that I will do as your Attorney General. And the only thing I want to leave you with this before I take any questions is I've run statewide twice and I've won twice, including once with Donald Trump on the ballot. You can't govern if you don't win, and I know how to win in Pennsylvania. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Eugene. We're going to go back now to the Auditor General candidates. We'll start with Mark Rossi. You have 3 minutes. And I know Mark is on the line somewhere.
There you go. Okay, well, thank you for am I good?
Yeah, you're good. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you for hosting this tonight, and thank all the candidates for being here as well and putting in their time. And I'm Mark Rossi. I'm a state representative for the 126th District, Berks County. I'm in my 6th term, 11th year right now. And it's been one of the greatest honors serving. I'm a previous business owner in the city of Reading, and ran that company as president from 2001 until I sold it in 2018. If you don't know much about me, the day I decided that I was getting interested in politics was March 26, 2009, when my childhood friend took a gun, put it to his chest, and killed himself. And it was at that time that I came forward and talked about my own childhood sexual abuse, because the friend who killed himself was a classmate of mine who was also sexually abused by the priest. And it was at that time that I knew I had to become an advocate and go to Harrisburg to fight and change the laws. And that's what I did. I got myself elected in 2012. And by 2019, we had the first piece of legislation that I had out there signed into law from Governor Tom Wolf, came to my high school. And it created the statute of limitations for the criminal statute to be unlimited. And we changed our civil from 30 to 55 to give victims all the time that they need to get the justice and put them on the same playing field as perpetrators. You know, everybody knows about the 2018 grand jury report that came out of that, where they listed over 1,000 victims and 300 predator priests out there. And the recommendations also talked about the 2-year window, and that's what we're currently fighting. And we passed so many times over the years, but at the beginning of this session, when the Republicans had a majority of 101 to the minority of the Democrats in 99, is when I got elected as Speaker of the House, which a lot of people didn't see coming, but somebody had to step up. If we would have allowed the Republican to elect one of themselves, they would have passed those horrible constitutional amendments, the voter ID, the regulatory reform. And when I was able to get elected Speaker, I made sure single-handedly that those constitutional amendments would have never got on the ballot. But
And I'm
what
going to ask you to start wrapping up because we need to
Okay.
get to the next candidate.
I'm not seeking re-election in the 126th district House seat. And listen, I'm just going there to the Auditor General to work to transform the office to make it as efficient and effective as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Next up is another Mark. Mark Pensley.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Oh, and I see you too.
Great.
Go ahead.
Mark Pensley. I'm going into my 5th year as controller of Lehigh County, where I oversee a $500 billion budget, and I'm proud to be running for Auditor General. I grew up in a small town, Montgomery County, the son of a public school teacher and a programmer, and we lived like on the precipice of poverty. So, you know, one bad financial catastrophe would throw us into despair. Fortunately, I was lucky enough to have 2 supportive parents that really encouraged me to follow my dreams. And I believed, obviously, I wanted to be out of that cycle. And I thought the way out of that was to go to college. And I had no idea how I was going to pay for college. So frankly, like many others, I signed up into the Army Reserves in order to pay for college. And it helped me pay for 3 solid years of Kutztown University. But in 1992, there was a deep recession. And I couldn't afford to go to school anymore. So despite serving our country, there was no money, and I stopped going to college. And at this point, a number of my friends had already graduated, but they were, you know, they were McDonald's or Kentucky Fried Chicken. And, you know, then like now, there was not a way to earn a living. And I felt, you know, the heat of poverty staring, you know, on my neck. And I just didn't want to do that. But I was very lucky, quite frankly. So I had a grandfather who owned a small business. It was a traveling salesman. So I went up to work for him, and we would travel 30,000 miles a year together. And like any good grandparent, he would tell me a lot of stories. And one of the stories that he said to me was, you know, Mark, you'll know when you make it, you know, when you don't have to worry about the refrigerator breaking. And that kind of crystallized it for me, like what I had been fearing all of this time. And, you know, 5 years later at night school, you know, I was no longer on, I graduated from Northeastern University, and I was no longer.
You need to wrap it up a little bit because I'm trying to give everyone
Okay, great.
the same amount of time.
Yep. Yeah. So look, I think democracy is going to be decided in Pennsylvania, and I believe the Auditor General can help people understand, you know, how government can work for them. And it's a transformative position, and I can help make this happen.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank
Next up is Malcolm Kenyatta.
Thank you so much, Jill, and I'm excited to be with you all. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Malcolm Kenyatta. I'm running to be your next Auditor General for a simple reason. I think that government should actually work for working people and working families. When we talk about the threats to democracy, certainly folks who don't respect the results of elections, who show up at capitals trying to change them, that represents a threat. But there's a different threat of people who look at government and look at the services that they depend on and they're not seeing it work or show up in their lives in the way that they should. The Auditor General sometimes gets treated like the state's accountant. It's not the state's accountant, it's the state's watchdog. It's the public advocate. It's the one job in state government that's about finding problems and pulling together the coalitions that it takes to solve them. That's what I've done my entire career. In the State House, I've been really grateful for over half decade at this point to serve on the Finance Committee, on the Commerce Committee, where I lead our subcommittee on financial services and banking, on the State Government Committee, where I lead our subcommittee on government operations. And I've talked very clearly about the three main priorities I have as your next Auditor General. First, we're going to have to rebuild the Bureau of School Audits, which was completely decimated and ended under the current Auditor General. Second, we're going to have to use the Auditor General's office as a tool to protect workers, to take on things like wage theft, and to make sure people are getting the type of deal that they deserve. That's why I'm really excited that today the Philadelphia Building Trades endorsed my campaign, along with over every member of Congress except for one, majority of my House colleagues, and so many others, because they know that when it comes to protecting working people, I don't just talk about it, it's in my bones. Finally, we have to use the Auditor General's office to really create communities of learning, to not just find the bad actors, but to find municipalities and counties that are doing things really well and to share that all across the Commonwealth. I have been across this Commonwealth campaigning for Democrats up and down the ballot. I think I'm in a strong position to win, and I would love to earn your support.
Thank you, Malcolm, and you kept it to 3 minutes. That was very good.
There you go.
I'm going to go back to the Attorney General candidates, and the question I have for all three of you is, what unique quality do you bring to this race? What differentiates you from the others? And how will you win in the general election? And I'll go to who I started with last, which was Eugene DePasquale.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. You have 3 minutes to tell us
Great.
what distinguishes you from everybody else and how you're going to win the general.
So yes, thank you. So two parts. There we go. Two parts that clearly, I believe, distinguish me. Number one is I have a record of protecting Pennsylvanians in every single part of this state. Whether it's following the Stoneman Douglas shooting, I co-chaired the school safety task force with Governor Wolf. That led me to every single school district in the state, making sure that we were protecting our children. Whether it was my childhood audit, where I then traveled the whole state, making sure to protect our most vulnerable children, whether it was cracking down on waste in Harrisburg, whether it was cracking down on the untested rape kits, and so many more. There's simply no one else that has the ability to go into every single part of this state and say there is a record of protecting Pennsylvanians that I do in every single corner of this state, whether it's school districts in Erie, whether it's taxpayers in Philadelphia, whether it's untested rape kits in Scranton, whether it's the drilling impacting drinking water in rural Pennsylvania. I have the ability to do that in every single part of the state. Another thing that impacts this is I've already won statewide. I know how to win statewide. And that is something that I simply just have a track record of doing, including in 2016, when Trump won the state. I won the state by nearly 6 points, which means I was about 7 points above the top of the ticket. So I know how to win in this state. I know how to run above the top of the ticket when necessary. And I also know how to be a team player. All of the row office candidates in particular must be team candidates. And I know how to work with the other candidates because I've done that with Josh Shapiro and Joe Torsella in 2016. And I know how to do it again, regardless of who the ticket is. I'll be a team player. I know how to sell my record across Pennsylvania, and I know how to win in this state.
Thank you, Eugene. Next, Jack Stolzheimer, same question. Jack, are you still with us? Nope, he is not. Jared Solomon. Is Jared still here?
No, it's not.
And Jared's not here. Okie dokie. Keir, are you still here? Keir Gray? Keir apparently got off as well. So we're going to go to our treasurer candidates. Ryan, can you tell us what unique quality you bring to this race and how you will win in the general?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, look, first and foremost, I'm the only candidate who is battle tested and proven. I've beat Republicans in their own backyard, and I think that's important. You have to have the experience in beating Republicans. I'm also the only candidate who has built a diverse statewide coalition of activists and supporters united to take back the treasurer's office. And then the only candidate capable of raising money needed to flip this office from red to blue. And I am the most experienced candidate for the job. I am the only one who has helped negotiate a state budget and knows how to actually pass laws to jumpstart treasury programs. So that is how I will win the treasurer's seat.
And is that how you believe you will win in the general as well?
That is exactly how I will win in the general. Yes.
Okay, great. Erin, do you want to say a few words about what unique quality you bring to this race and how you will win in the general?
Absolutely. So I am the only one in the race that's actually run a business and made it that experience of taking care of employees, running a retirement fund, running a benefits program for working people, that it was my charge. And I can honestly tell you that there has been nothing that has tested my mettle more than being in a tight financial situation on the 15th of the month and worrying about how you're going to pay your workers. I actually have a lot of experience working with somebody that ran a United States Treasury, and I learned a lot about the job, about financial services. And when I worked with Mr. O'Neill, that was back in 2003. So that was when all the financial deregulation was going on. So I learned more about that than I possibly could have in any college program. And knowing the mistakes that we've made in the past as far as investment, pensions, and all the problems that we had that led to the 2008 collapse and working people losing their homes and their retirements is the best way to make sure that we don't do it again. And that's my biggest concern, is making sure that we don't make those same mistakes. We are seeing Stacey Garrity already make some of those mistakes. She has a highly unregulated, unstable savings program that she's trying to force on small businesses all over the state. That is not going to fly. And I believe that you attack her on that. You prove that the Securities and Exchange Commission has said that that is a highly dangerous and volatile financial product. I don't think there's a small business or a working person in the state that is going to vote for her if you actually talk about that issue.
Thank you. Now back to the Auditor General candidates. Just as a reminder, the question is, what is one unique quality you bring to the race? What differentiates you? And how will you win in the general? We'll start with Mark Pinsley.
Thank you. So first off, I'm the only one that has a financial degree and has worked as controller, so very mini version of the Auditor General. Quite frankly, we need to take a look at the reality of this race, which is we already have an incumbent in there that we're running against who has been acting as Auditor General for the past 4 years and was the Dauphin County Controller prior to that. I have already run tough races. I flipped a seat in 2017. I flipped the controller's office in 2018 against an incumbent who had been there for 2 terms. And then I doubled or quadrupled actually my vote win in the most recent election. Since I've had the office, I've gone against actually healthcare industries where we found $70 million worth of savings. I went against Wells Fargo because they gave money to anti-abortionists, and I asked the county to move $145 million out of their bank and move it to a nonpartisan bank. And most recently, I did a document called The Cost of Misdiagnosis, which really went against large network hospitals who had been over-diagnosing and causing children to be removed from their families, from their loving families. And if you want to learn more about this, you can Google Maya and John Hopkins, and you'll see that they are going to end up paying her $260 million for the type of work that they did, which is exactly the same here in Lehigh County. And because of my work, these families are going to finally get justice against these hospitals. The Auditor General position is a technical position. It is not a legislative position. It is one that requires knowledge. I have the knowledge to start on day one, and I am the only one that can stand on the stage with the 4 and go toe-to-toe, the current Auditor General. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mark Rozzi.
Okay. Thank you. I would say one of my unique qualities is that I'm not afraid to take on any institution, public or private, and go toe to toe with them. I did that as my 11 years as a House rep, and while I was Speaker of the House, 140th Speaker. And the one thing that people know about me is that I can't be bought. And there's nothing I can't stand more than lobbyists and special interests up in Harrisburg. Tim DeFore, 80% of his campaign money has come from the Commonwealth Leaders PAC Fund. And think about that. So he gets all that money. You know, he moves the school audits, which were just transportation audits, back to PDE. Now he still has the power to audit the public schools and the charter schools, but he doesn't. So that's one of my main reasons of entering this race, is that I want to go and the AG's office to fight for all taxpayers. I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent. You know, the job is to make sure that the money is being fiscally spent in a responsible way. So, you know, I believe that I'm the best candidate to win in a general election, is because I have shown, even in this last, where my district used to be, I think 63%, through redistricting, they moved my district back to about 52.5%, 53%. And they came out of this last election with, I think, close to 64% of the vote, because I get Democrats, I get independents, and I get Republicans, and I get Republicans even to support me financially. Because they know that I will reach across the line and work with whoever to do whatever is best or whatever is right for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So there's.
Thank you. Your time is just about up, so I'm going to move it to Malcolm Kenyatta. The same question. What is a unique quality, and how will you win the general?
Thank you so much, Jill. I think one unique quality is my ability to build coalitions. You know, I want to just say up front, everybody running in this race is competent and would do this job a hell of a lot better than Tim DeFore. I'm certainly not going to spend the primary attacking other Democrats, one of whom will be our ultimate nominee. And so I think a part of the way you win the general election is we don't bloody each other up in the primary. And I'm going to speak to the things that I have done across this Commonwealth, running statewide, helping in all 67 counties elect Democrats up and down the ballot. And when we think about what it takes to win, it's that ability to organize, to build coalitions. When you look at the fact that every member of Congress, except for one, who range the ideological spectrum of our diverse party, have endorsed my campaign, I think it speaks to the fact that they want to run with me on the ticket. Because I do believe that democracy and winning elections is a team sport. But when you look at the coalitions I've been able to build, I've been able to do that in Harrisburg as well, where I've worked with my colleagues to pass state budgets, worked on committees to bring out substantive legislation on everything from hardening our digital infrastructure to a bill we just passed called the Clawback Act out of the House to codify some of the ways in which we claw back misuse state dollars and to expand those regulations to quasi-government agencies as well. And, you know, and finally, I'll just make this last quick point. When we talk about what is necessary to win in this race, we have to also get people to give a damn about Auditor General. And I think when I talk about making government work, when I talk about the oversight of these agencies, I do so with a lived experience that I think is deeply valuable, not just in terms of the vision and the priorities that I'm going to set as the next Auditor General, but as somebody who can go to the very voters who we need, voters who are, you know, who hear that siren song of an autocrat saying, I alone can fix it, who are frustrated with government. I don't have to go to them and say, hey, I understand your story. I can go to them and say, hey, I understand because I've been there as well. And I think that that matters when we need voters to not just sit on the couch, but to show up in a divisive election cycle and vote for Democrats up and down the ballot.
Thank you, Malcolm. with respect to Attorney General, Joe Kahn has just joined. So Joe, I want to give you the opportunity to say a few words about yourself. You have 3 minutes. And then I will follow up with questions to the other two who are still on the Zoom. So go ahead, Joe.
Great. Well, thank you, Jill, and good evening, everyone. Greetings from Harrisburg. I know some of my colleagues are also broadcasting from the Hilton. And I'll just echo at the beginning what Malcolm said about his race, which is that any of my rivals or competitors would be far better than the kind of people we can expect the Republicans to put up. And it's really an honor to be here with all of you. As many of you know, my name is Joe Kahn, and I have spent my entire career trying to keep people safe from crime, from corruption, and attacks on our rights. But my story didn't begin as a criminal prosecutor or as a county solicitor. It begins back when my dad was a young man in Pakistan, growing up with dreams of coming to America and building bridges. And because at the time that he wanted to do that, the president wasn't Donald Trump, who would go on to call on a ban for all Muslim immigrants. But because it was John F. Kennedy, my dad got to live out his dream. He came to Philadelphia and literally was able to build bridges and all kinds of other amazing public works projects across the city of Philadelphia as an engineer. He met my mother, Patty, and they fell in love. And in 1975, when a Muslim and a Catholic got together, a Jewish neighborhood was the logical place to raise their family. So that's how I ended up in Northeast Philadelphia. I think Jill knows Albergard Avenue pretty well. I went to Greenberg Elementary and Central High School, along with my brother Tarek, who many of you know. He's serving now in the Pennsylvania State House. And I was fortunate to get to go on to get my law degree at the University of Chicago. I didn't know anyone in Chicago. I didn't know any lawyers growing up. And I found a professor who became my role model. He had a very similar background, Muslim immigrant dad, Christian American mom, always navigating different cultures and figuring out how to teach law, how to practice law, how to navigate public service, and really how to bring people together. And because I had the good fortune of having Barack Obama as my role model as a young man, I was able to come home to Philadelphia with a sense of purpose. I served in the district attorney's office right out of law school in Philadelphia, prosecuting child abuse and sexual assault and domestic violence, advocating for the most vulnerable victims of our society. I went into the United States Attorney's Office, not only to bring down the level of gun violence we were seeing in those years in Southwest Philadelphia, but to root out corruption. The kind of political corruption we saw in Allentown and Reading, where Democrats were giving our party a bad name, looking out for themselves instead of the people that they were elected to serve, and corruption in the boardroom, taking on big pharma for the opioid epidemic, taking on big tech, which I'll talk about a little bit later tonight. And finally, I've been privileged to be in Bucks County as the county solicitor, where I've stood up defending our rights, the right to an abortion, there are Pennsylvania constitutional rights to a clean environment, and most famously, our right to vote, which came under attack like never before in 2020. And when Donald Trump and his goons tried to throw it out, we beat them in court. I was proud to lead county solicitors across Pennsylvania to make sure that every vote was counted. We need to do it again in 2024. And I see my time is up.
Yep,
So
very good. Your time is up. Now I have a question for the AG candidates that are still on. I actually have a two-part question. One is, and as chair of a Jewish organization, this question is very important to me. What can the Office of Attorney General do to prevent and address hate crimes such as anti-Semitism or Islamophobia? And then additionally, what is one specific policy that you want to enact or bring about with respect to the Office of Attorney General? I'm going to start with Jared Solomon.
Hey, Jill.
Okay, there you are. I feel like it's a little bit like the Brady Bunch. I'm sorry. But go ahead.
Bad version of the Brady Bunch. Yes, I love the question, and my faith, my Judaism is important to me, and I think those values, having those values as Attorney General, here's I think what I would do. First, we need enforcement. Jill, we currently have laws on the books like ethnic intimidation, where we could use those tools to prosecute those that are trying to target individual groups through anti-Semitism, bigotry, any type of animus. Second, what we would do, I would take the model from Virginia and create a anti-Semitism task force, not just on to deal with anti-Semitism, but broadly to deal with bigotry, hate crimes of any sort, to make sure that our most vulnerable feel protected. I would bring together educators, faith leaders, local prosecutors, the state police, local DAs, and local police to have a task force to do a few things, to speak out against hate wherever it should arise. And we have the roots of a very extremist state. So we need to really guard against hate at every turn. But also what we could do is not just speak out, but work in partnership through collaboration and coordination when these instances arise to find out how I can work with local DAs to prosecute these crimes. We are better when we are collaborating and coordinating. Another piece of this that you talked about, a piece of legislation that we need, Jill. The piece of legislation we need is Dan Frankel's hate crimes law. That will allow us, through the model of prosecution and the task force, to really ensure that we can prosecute these crimes efficiently and effectively.
Thank you, Jared. Eugene?
Yes, thank you. If I'm fortunate enough to be elected your Attorney General, I will start immediately on the transition with this issue by directing a team of lawyers to research every single law we already have on the books to make sure that we have everything at our disposal and have a core group of attorneys prepared to prosecute these crimes where we see them. So that's number one, and be ready to do that on day one. Number two, similar to Jared, I will have a task force and we will meet across the state, and they will be faith-based leaders. I'll also have teachers on there and child advocates, broad spectrum across the state, so that we have our ears to the ground and we're hearing everything that is happening. So I know, and the task force that I have and the group of prosecutors I have in the office know exactly what's going on, so we can go out and root out these hate crimes. Third, finding out what tools in addition that we don't have that are needed to make sure I'm making the case to the legislature to add to my disposal so that we can go in and have more tools to root this out. And similar to what happened after the shooting at Stoneman Douglas, where Governor Wolf and I co-chaired the school safety task force, I will go across the state, meeting with students, cracking down on bullies of all kinds, whether it be anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, or any other type of bullying, whether it's trying to bully our LGBTQ community, to make sure that our children are protected. And that will be a high priority for me. So those four things: protecting our children, traveling to the schools, advocating for new laws that are needed, using my experience as a legislator and auditor general to do that. Also, having that task force so we have our ears to the ground, and being ready on day one with a group of attorneys with the laws that already exist to prosecute these hate crimes.
Thank you. Joe? You're on mute. You need to unmute.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, I can hear you.
Thank you. So if it's okay, I'd like to begin, before I talk about what I will do as Attorney General, with a little bit of my own experience. My children have grandparents who are Jewish, Muslim, and Christian. And it is my experience that those who want an excuse to hate on Muslim Americans are the same folks who often want to hate on Jewish Americans. I have found in my experience that all too often in our country, in our communities, people are looking for scapegoats, and that it's important that we stand united and we stand in solidarity, always showing up for each other, which is what I've done, not just as an attorney. I've been doing that my entire life. But as an attorney, many of you know and are represented by Senator Vincent Hughes. He will tell you about his personal experience, about my work as a prosecutor, prosecuting hate crimes when I was in the Philadelphia DA's office. It's very difficult work, and I agree with Jared that the law should be much stronger than it is. This was at the dawn of our ethnic intimidation statute, and it isn't as strong a law as it should be. But nonetheless, I was aggressive, I was creative, I was tenacious, and I was fair. And I think that Senator Hughes will tell you that it's because of that dedication that we were able to attain justice for a very close personal friend of his, who was horribly mistreated and the victim of a hate crime at all times while leaving Senator Hughes's wedding. But when I went on to the United States Attorney's Office, that coincided with the election of President Barack Obama. And that's when I learned about a very, very disturbing trend happening here in Pennsylvania. And not just in rural communities, in places like Northeast Philadelphia, all over Pennsylvania, the rise in hate. We saw the election of the first African-American president also correlate with the rise in anti-Semitism, in the formation of hate groups that were finding each other online. And we're working closely with federal agents. It's not just about showing up when something bad happens. In my view, it's about using the Attorney General's office to be proactive, to make sure that we have all the tools that we use to infiltrate drug organizations, all the tools that we use to bust up political corruption, to make sure that we are doing the work that needs to be done to protect vulnerable communities. That is what I have done over the course of my career. It is what I will do as your Attorney General. I believe that your question was a two-part question, and it asked about some of the things that we will do as new initiative. And with the time that I have, I would ask you to go to my website because I talk specifically about doing what I can do as the only candidate who has experience at the county level, both working in a DA's office and working in a county solicitor's office. And in my opinion, those offices in the 67 counties of Pennsylvania, they're full of good people that don't always know how to use the powers that they have. And I want to not just take on big cases on behalf of the AG's office for the Commonwealth, but I want to empower all of the people of good intention and goodwill to protect their communities. And we call it a 67 county approach to public safety. It also gets into our platform on housing justice, which is the new idea that has never been done in an AG's office. And I see I'm at my time.
Yes, you are.
Thank you.
The next question is for the treasurer candidate. What is one specific policy that you want to change in the office of the treasurer, and or what is something new that you want to enact to make that office better? Ryan? Ryan, are you still here?
I'm still here.
Okay,
Sorry
go
about that.
ahead.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Well, look, I'm just going to combine everything into one. I want to expand the current 529 programs. I believe the expansion of the 529 program was a gateway to ending generational poverty. And as treasurer, I'll secure, and I'll work with the legislature to secure legislation that allows me to set up 529 plans for any child enrolled in Head Start out of the profits of the existing plan. Because if you think about it, even $100 invested early can mean the start of a real career in Pennsylvania. Second, I'll establish an impact investment fund. Protecting Pennsylvania's future means investing in a culturally and environmentally responsible way. That's why I want to establish this evergreen impact investment fund to attract, assist, and retain quality technology-enabled businesses in Pennsylvania. Third, I want to establish an infrastructure first fund. Pennsylvania is uniquely positioned right now because we are affecting its largest infrastructure investment in decades. And we must leverage this one-time federal funding into generations of growth and build out. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. We have to take advantage of it. I believe an infrastructure investment fund at Treasury can leverage that funding into a continual investment by local governments into roads, bridges, and finally making meaningful progress on our poor infrastructure. And while we're doing that, we're going to put people back to work and we're going to be creating jobs. So that's what I want to do as your treasurer.
Great, thank you, Ryan. Erin, to answer the same question, what is one specific policy you would want to change or something new that you would want to enact?
Okay, the biggest thing that I would not want is to see implementation of the Keystone Saves program. As I said, it's unregulated, it's unsafe, and it's not recommended by the SEC. But I do have a replacement for that, and it's the Pennsylvania Center for Commonwealth, and it is a full banking suite. So instead of doing what she was doing with one single really bad financial product, we would have the state administer a marketplace that would be that those products would be provided by a number of financial institutions that are all approved by the Pennsylvania Department of Banking and Securities. Participants in that program will be voluntary, unlike the forced program that Stacy's done. There'll be no fees for the employers. These products, unlike hers, will allow an employer to contribute. We're Democrats, so we don't think a retirement is something that only the employer puts money in. I want to give the employers the opportunity to contribute to that. There'll be at least 6 products there. that are IRAs, a traditional, a Roth, a simple, a spousal, and a simplified employee pension, which is the SEP IRA, which is the one I like the most, as well as a 401k and a 401(b). And then the second tier of that program is opportunities to create employee ownership and profit sharing. So employee ownership is becoming a big deal with small businesses when people are getting ready to leave their business or retire. Doing an employee ownership program allows lower income workers to start building wealth earlier and often from jump. And it also builds solidarity in the workplace. So those are that's the big program that I really want to put in place.
Thank you. And now I have questions for the Auditor General candidates, which are the same. What is one specific policy in that office that you would want to change? Something that you would also want to enact? I'm going to start with Malcolm.
Thank you so much, Jill. But if I could very quickly, I also want to respond to your point about anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and just the culture of hatred right now. One of the things that the Auditor General's office should be doing is auditing the ways in which state police and local law enforcement agencies submit data to NIBRS. And NIBRS is the National Incident-Based Reporting System. And right now, the participation from the state is piss poor, to put it lightly. And so we have to do a much better job of training folks in law enforcement to identify hate-based violence and to input this data, because you cannot manage what you don't measure. And we know that we need to better measure and manage the hate that we're seeing. And so in all these issues, I would tell you, this is the other AG's office that can be deeply involved and engaged. But I think the main thing we have to do is bring back the Bureau of School Audits. Those compliance audits that were used to be done by the Auditor General's office did a lot more than just look at transportation, also looked at the types of documentation, critical documentation, like child abuse clearances and those different things of the folks who are working within our school districts. And also when we bring back that office, we have to reimagine it. There are so many people who are worried about the fact that so many of our schools don't have access to trades programs and things like that. And so I'm really going to be looking at how do we bring back a robust annual compliance audits of our schools and use the ability to do special and performance audits to better ensure that every single one of our kids is getting the type of quality education they deserve. Tim DeFore did one major audit as it related to schools, and his major takeaway, as parroted by the Commonwealth Foundation, was that our schools were overfunded. A week later, the Commonwealth Court decision came out saying once and for all what we all knew, that our schools are not overfunded. Our schools are chronically underfunded. And I think one of the things we know is the impact that has on the climate of the schools, the physical condition of the buildings. And so when I talk about doing school audits, we also need to do an environmental audit of the conditions of our schools. A lot of us know anecdotally that schools have lead, asbestos, and mold, but we need to understand the true scope of this problem and try to bring the type of political pressure to bear that the auditor can bring to finally invest in PlanCon 2.0 and make the types of significant investments to get and remediate those toxins out of our schools.
Great. Next up will be Mark Rossi.
Muted. Okay. Again, thanks for having this tonight. This is our last opportunity to say anything, and I appreciate the chance. Of course, and I agree with Malcolm about bringing the school audits back from PDE back to the Auditor General's office and have Tim DeFore actually do his job. But there is a reason that he moved that office to PDE, the school audits on the transportation and the certifications. Was in 2013, he had about 120 auditors. And in 2023, he was down to 46 auditors for that office. The legislature, the House and Senate, has been cutting the AG budget over the years. And I think they're operating roughly with about a $45 million budget right now. So he had to make choices and try to move auditors into certain positions that are doing other important work. And I get the reasoning behind it. But again, when you're taking that much money from all these special interest groups, it definitely doesn't look like this guy's not bought and paid for. But definitely, we got to bring that back, but we also got to go to the legislature and ask for more money. Now, the second important thing that I would love to enact, and this would have to be done by the legislature, is the AG, the Auditor General, needs subpoena power, just like the Treasurer has it and the Attorney General has it. If the Auditor General would have that, he could actually do better audits, and not with one hand tied behind his back, where he's trying to get information from these organizations and they're either sending redacted information or they're not sending information at all. So a key thing, if we want to have the best open and accurate audits, we definitely need to have subpoena power.
Thank you so much. Next is Mark Pinsley.
Hi, yeah, I think it's a great question too. You know, my answer, I believe, gets to the heart of, you know, maybe why there's discontent with Biden and the economy, and perhaps can help us hold the White House. You know, we really have a tale of two economies. You know, GDP is up and unemployment is down, but people are still discontent. You know, and why is that? It's because, you know, those that are making money through traded wealth, so stocks and bonds, they're having a great economy, right? They're seeing their pie grow. And those that are, you know, on the floor standing as cashiers, or, you know, are walking the beat as cops, or getting up early as bus drivers, you know, their economy hasn't gotten better. In fact, it's gotten worse. So there is no one specific policy or one specific program. It's the way we think and talk about our economy. That's what we need to change, right? And as Auditor General, my number one priority is going to be to help people understand and change how we talk about the economy. You know, I want them to understand that, you know, providing more housing is good for the economy and for Pennsylvania, and that how, you know, providing childcare is good for Pennsylvania and for the economy, and how education and underfunding education, as Malcolm says, you know, creates a poor economy, not just for the individuals, but for Pennsylvania in general. You know, as being somebody that worked in a large company, one of the things that I know is that when you're looking at coming into a state, you take a look at how quickly the under 40 crowd is growing. And if it's less than 2%, you don't put business there. And so if we don't have a growing economy and we don't have a growing youth that are staying here in Pennsylvania, we are going to lose. So I will work to change that. And I'm the only candidate that can deliver on this, because I understand how to connect the dollars that we spend with the audits that we can do. And I can show Pennsylvanians who are living on the precipice of poverty that there is hope.
Thank you. I
Thank
have
you.
one last question, and it's the same question for every candidate, no matter what the office. During the judicial elections, the question that the judges often got asked is, why does it matter whether a judge is a Democrat or a Republican? And particularly when you're looking at the office of Auditor General or Treasurer, or even Attorney General, which is the Commonwealth's chief law enforcement officer, you often get that same question. And I think it's really important to understand why it matters that we have a Democrat in each of these roles. So with respect to the Attorney General candidate, or that are still here, I'll start with you, Joe. Why is it important that we have a Democrat in this job?
Well, it's in part because of the times we live in. I come to this race as the candidate with the longest or strongest record as a prosecutor. And so, yes, that does position me to stand up to the Republicans' attacks that Democrats are somehow soft on crime. And that's important not only in an election, because to do the important reforms that we need when it comes to our broken criminal justice system, the position that I have as a former prosecutor makes me the most effective advocate possible to fix things like our broken bail system. It's the reason that when we went to Bucks County and created a pardons and expungement unit, I was able to do that and get full bipartisan support. When we enacted a ban the box policy in Bucks County, the same thing. As a former prosecutor, I was uniquely situated and suited to carry forward that message. I'm going to be fearless when I sit on the board of pardons. Again, not being worried about being called soft on crime, because I've been doing the work for over 16 years. But I think it goes much more beyond issues of public safety. And I think that the most pressing issue facing us right now are these attacks on our rights. I've talked a little bit about the work that I did stopping Donald Trump and his friends from taking away our right to vote. which wasn't just in 2020. I mean, it was a relentless campaign pushing things through the courts. But I come to this race as a son of a nurse who worked in the ER, who raised me on the stories of the women who lost their lives because they lacked safe access to abortion care. And this is a value that I literally have had instilled in me since I was a kid. It inspired me to stand up for women's rights as a sexual assault and domestic violence prosecutor. And it is the reason that I did not flinch when I was the only county solicitor in Pennsylvania to use the power of my office to advocate for access to the abortion pill. These are the reasons why we cannot afford to get this wrong. These are the reasons that we must win the Attorney General's office. We need to be prepared on day one to defend our election. We cannot allow Donald Trump to steal the election results in the court. We must defend all of our rights, and that starts with the right to choose. I have done that. I will continue to do that as our next Attorney General.
Thank you. Jared, do you want to answer that same question, why it matters that a Democrat wins?
Yeah, this is core to who I am, being a Democrat. Raised by a single mom, right? The Republican philosophy is that it's just the unabashed individual alone, not supported by community, not supported by government. That was not my experience. My mom needed support. She needed support from her union. She needed support from my great grandparents and grandparents. And a key moment, she needed the assistance of government at every turn to support her young family. So it's because of these values that I want to pursue this office, to make sure that I project those values with strength. Those key democratic values right now in Pennsylvania, in the legislature in which I work, we are limited. Joanna McClinton and Matt Bradford are doing a fantastic job. And all of us in the Democratic caucus are pushing key democratic values, workers' rights, reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, a whole series of gun legislation. But we are stymied at every turn by the Senate Republicans. The Attorney General's office has national import. And what I will be able to do, imbue with these values and my leadership ability, is take those values through the Attorney General's office, using the power of the office and litigation and the courts to reshape the Commonwealth, to do what we cannot do in the legislature because we are politically blocked. It is essential that we elect a Democrat to this office with the right values. Thanks, Jill.
Thank you. Eugene?
Just need to make sure I unmuted myself. So yes, it is absolutely critical that we elect a Democrat as Attorney General. There might have been a time where it wasn't as essential, but now it is. It's critical because we need an Attorney General who will stand up for reproductive freedom. I guarantee you the Republican nominee will be an extremist on abortion. We need a Democratic nominee or a Democratic Attorney General who will push back on these crazy book bans. I guarantee you the Republican nominee will be horrible when it comes to book bans. When it comes to protecting the LGBTQ community, particularly in our schools, we need a Democratic Attorney General. When it comes to protecting our environment, I guarantee you the Republican Attorney General candidate will be in the hip pocket of the big drillers. I've already taken on the drillers in my investigation of all the Marcellus Shale drilling that particularly impacted the drinking water of rural Pennsylvania. These are all reasons, and they go on, and particularly on protecting our democracy. The first podcast that Dave Sunday went on as a candidate for Attorney General, and he is one of the potential Republican nominees, was a podcast with some of the crazy conspiracy theorists and election deniers. So that's why we need a Democratic Attorney General. We also need someone we know can win. I've won twice before statewide, including once when Donald Trump ran, coming about 7 points above the top of the ticket in 2016. But I also want to make it clear that look, I'm going to fight, and I'm sure Joe and Jared, because I'm saying pulling their name because they're the ones still on the call. They're going to fight like Dickens to be the nominee, as will I. But I want to make it very clear. I want it to be me. I think it should be me. I think I'd be the best one for the job. And I'm only saying this because Joe and Jared are on the phone, but if it turns out to be someone who isn't on the phone, I will be supporting whoever the Democratic nominee is. When you go to all these forums, and I know we end up seeing each other, I'm going to make it clear also. Well, we have some differences in background and experience, personal, professional. I've increasingly grown to respect in Joe and Jared even more as we do this, and certainly the other candidates as well. And I want to, final point, we need a Democratic Attorney General. Do I think it should be me? Do I have a track record of winning? The answer is yes. Do I have a track record of protecting Pennsylvanians in every single corner of this state? The answer is yes. Do I have a track record of taking on the big fights and winning? The answer is yes. But we need a Democratic Attorney General. After this primary is over, whoever our nominee is, we all must rally behind that person.
Thank you, Eugene. The same question is for the treasurer. Why does it matter that we have a Democratic treasurer? Erin, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Number one, the fact that our current treasurer is a Republican means that she will not acknowledge any facts or truth regarding our economy because of the current president. She consistently lies about what is causing inflation, 9/10 of which is about productivity, supply, demand, and wages. But she won't say that because she would much rather blast away at the president on Twitter. So she is lying to people about what is actually happening because she's taking a partisan approach and not a pragmatic one. Number two, her job is to make sure that she protects the pensions of public sector workers and protects the coffers that are filled out the sweat of the brows of working people. Yet she is a member of a party and says nothing when they put out a 900-page manifesto stating that they are going to annihilate at minimum 50,000 public sector workers and up to 1 million federal employees. That is a manifesto that was put out this summer, and she has never disputed any of that. They are participating in killing our country's entire social safety net. They have declared war on county election workers, on court workers, on road workers. I mean, every time you turn around, there's a new public sector worker that they have decided to demonize. You can't see Chris Christie on a stage without him talking about teachers' unions being the spawn of the devil. And it's a complete war on our working people. And I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of the fact that our treasurer and other Republicans won't stand up and stick up for the fact that we actually need these services. We need these workers. And this is our social safety net. They're willing to destroy that in order to win an election. And that's why we have to have Democrats, because our working people, our coffers, the very fabric of our society that rests on our social safety net depends on having a Democrat in there to stand up for the people that do the work every day.
Thank you, Erin. Ryan, same question. Why is it important we have a Democrat?
Well, look, I'm going to start by saying this is more than just a race for state treasurer. This is a battle to preserve American democracy. The state's highest ranking mega extremist is State Treasurer Stacey Garrity. She has a radical anti-school, anti-worker, anti-woman, anti-democracy agenda. She makes no bones about it on social media. What she says publicly, it's out there. Stacey is more concerned about those sort of issues that divide us instead of doing what actually unites us and actually doing the job as treasurer. Having a Democrat in that position is critical. And having someone who wants to do the damn job is actually critical too. The treasurer has never been a partisan position. She has made it that way. Quite frankly, we have to take her out, and I'm the only candidate who can flip that red seat back to blue. And I thank you for allowing me to be on this call tonight, and would appreciate everyone's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. The same question again for the Auditor General. We'll start with Mark Pinsley.
Yeah, thank you. You know, like everyone else has said, really the issue comes down to our values, right? And so we have already seen an Auditor General that has chosen not to do school audits. And then he's choosing not to do other audits as well. So for Democrats, we can come in and we can audit the schools, we can audit housing, we can audit prisons, we can audit children and youth. There's so many things that we can take a look at. And probably one of the biggest issues is that we can look for structural problems that have been created because of money. And we are going to tell the truth about it. And that's one of the issues that I see, with Republicans in general, is you just can't trust them to tell the truth, even if it's against them. You could, search Pinsley and Dr. Jensen, and it talks about one of the audits that I did. Look, and it wasn't great for Democrats either. But, what we can do is we can stand up for it, and we can recognize what we did wrong, and we can make changes. And if we, continue to elect Republicans, they have no intention to do that. And I would also agree with what Eugene said, no matter who wins, I am going to support the Democrat who wins the primary, because no matter what, a Democrat must win this seat. We can't continue to have, an auditor general that's looking the other way and is, being owned by Jeffrey Yast, number one, first and foremost. So once again, the biggest thing is that we can look at structural things that are created due to money, and then we can make real recommendations for change and change how the economy is spoken about. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question for Mark Rossi. Is Mark still on? I'm not sure that he is. It looks like he got off. So this question for you, Malcolm. Why does it matter that the Auditor General is a Democrat?
First of all, thank you so much for this conversation, for the ability to share our ideas about how we ensure that these critical offices are primarily in the hands of people who actually care about democracy. Tim DeFore is a very soft-spoken person, but if you Google Malcolm Kenyatta and Tim DeFore, you can read articles about his first time appearing before the state legislature as a member of the state government committee. And it's interesting for me to believe I've been there long enough to be the longest serving member currently of the state government committee. But we had 15 8 a.m. hearings after the 2020 election, where my Republican colleagues continue to lie about the election and then use their lies as justifications for trying to make it more difficult to vote. And when we think about that constitutional amendment that they tried to pass to effectively ban abortion, to deregulate everything that protects our environment, another thing they had tucked in that was to put the Auditor General in charge of auditing all future statewide elections. They've actually introduced that as amendments to multiple bills this session. So I asked Auditor General DeFore at that first hearing, did he believe the election was free and fair? Someone who had just won statewide. He gave a hemming and hawing answer where he said he wasn't sure. Only his election was fair, but he wasn't sure about the rest. There were serious questions. We cannot allow that profile and courage to be in charge of anything in our state, let alone doing the critical job of Auditor General, calling balls and strikes, being willing to tell the truth, showing no fear and no favor. The Auditor General is the watchdog for working people. I think it's time that we had an underdog in that role. I think it's time that we had somebody that can go to folks in every single corner of this Commonwealth, as I have, talking about our democratic values, talking about how these audits are not just intellectual exercises, but these are actually real people behind every dollar. And when government works or doesn't work, I understand it like so many families. I depended on LAHEAP to get through cold winters like the one we have right now. I depended on SNAP benefit. My mom depended on WIC when I was a baby to get by. I know what happens when government works or doesn't work. And so often we have Republicans who were born on third base, think they hit a home run, don't care about working people or working families, and really have no interest in making government work better for working people. My colleagues in this race have said something that we all agree on. I think it is shameful that one man donated to our Auditor General $1.8 million. $1.8 million. 8 cents of every dollar he raised. We can do better than that. And that means having a Auditor General who's going to stand up for working people every single day. And I'm going to do that because that's what I've always done. And I'd love to earn your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. Thank you to all of you for being on this Zoom. Thank you to all the candidates for being here tonight. This is a really important Zoom. While we all pay attention to the top of the ticket, Biden and Casey and our congressional candidates, these statewide races matter. They affect our day-to-day lives, whether it's the Attorney General, the Treasurer, or the Auditor General. So please tell your friends to watch this video. It'll be on the DJOP YouTube channel. It will be mailed out via email to all the registrants. And use what you heard tonight to make informed decisions in determining who you will vote for and who you tell others to vote for. Once again, I would like to thank Dottie Miller and Andrea Baptiste for co-hosting this event with us this evening. If you would like to learn more about either organization, you can go to djop.org and see upcoming programming that we have. And you can as well go to the WLI webpage. Thank you again and have a good evening, everyone.